Okay, so it's day 117, going through my old journal, and the quote for today says, "Surprise is the greatest gift which life can grant us." And then it says, "In what ways has life surprised you, and who in your life has given you your best surprise?" So if you're following along, just pause the video and take a second to think about your response. And let's see what I said. It's cold in here. Okay, so I said, I guess the biggest surprise has been, gosh, these last few days have been a little bit like, I said, I guess the big surprise has been realizing that life as an adult is much different than how it's portrayed in TV, movies, and by other people. When I was young, I sort of expected things to just fall into place. I was just taking things one step at a time without thinking too much about it. Like, okay, first I'll finish school, then go to college. At some point along the way, I'll meet a guy and probably get married and have kids. That was just, I just assumed that that would happen. And then I said, but to be honest, I never actually envisioned what that would actually be like. I never daydreamed or really thought concretely about marriage or kids or owning a house or anything. I was just kind of like going through the motions of what I thought I was supposed to do. It was always sort of an abstract idea that it would happen at some point in the future. Now I'm realizing that most people don't live these idealistic lives. And kind of going back to what I said the other day, I think it was more common for people to live something more similar to that, but now I just don't think that's as attainable for most people, most millennials or Gen Z. But I think in some cases it was like an idealized way, like what we were seeing on TV and movies. Like, you know, I've heard people on TikTok say, you know, all these, there's like this big division between men and women right now. And, you know, there's like these men that will be like, well, my grandparents, you know, had such a good marriage and such a good time. And then there's women that are clapping back and being like, have you talked to your grandma about her life? And like, if she would choose to do that again, you know. And some people, you know, are saying that like my grandma, you know, her husband beat her, you know, or cheated on her, and but that was just the way it was. Like, she didn't have any other options, and so you just kind of had to deal with it. I feel like my grandparents did have a pretty good relationship and marriage, but I don't think that that was as common as like what most people think it is. And I definitely, I have some friends that like, I'm pretty sure that their parents, you know, had great lives and everything was good for them, but I don't think it's as common as most people think it is. I think like with my parents, it definitely wasn't like, you know, what you would see on TV and movies, or like even my grandparents. And I just thought that we were the exception, but I think actually relationships like my grandparents were the exception. So yeah. But I'm glad I got to kind of see both sides of it. I did get to see like an example of a good relationship and also an example of a bad relationship with my parents. But anyway, I said, I guess I had some idea that it wasn't perfect for everyone after dealing with my parents' relationship, but I always thought that was the exception, that my dad was a rare narcissist that manipulated my mom into staying with him. That was true, but it doesn't seem to be all that rare. And I don't think most men are like to the level of like narcissism that my dad was, but yeah, I said I was fortunate to also get to see my grandparents who had a great relationship, but now I'm thinking that my grandfather was just a rare type of man. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't really want to get too, like, into that, like, man hating or anything like that, but there is starting to be the shift, I think, with how people in my generation view relationships and how relationships should happen. Like, you know, back in the day with my grandparents, it was really common to have like someone be a stay-at-home mom. And my grandma worked, but she had a beauty shop in her house, and my grandpa was a mechanic and he had his mechanic shop on the property. So they were both working, but they were both kind of like around home. And, you know, my grandma did do more of the domestic stuff, doing the laundry and, you know, cooking and things like that. But my grandpa also had a lot of, you know, duties that he did, and it was just kind of like they did kind of delegate, you know, who did what, and kind of split, you know, the tasks pretty evenly. And I know with like my parents, that split wasn't there. My mom basically did everything, and she worked full time and made most of the money and paid for most of the things. And it seems like now that more women are working full time like that, and they're not working out of their home like my grandma did, there's a more resentment because, you know, the women are working and also having to do all of the things around the house. And so I think there is becoming more conflict between, you know, the husband and wife dynamic because of that. And women are starting to speak out and say, you know, well, I expect more. I'm also working. I'm also making money. We both need to kind of like help contribute around the house and help contribute with like caring for the kids and everything. And so like, and there's kind of like a struggle with wanting, I think we're just in a transition, and it's just, I think couples are trying to figure out this transition, and there does seem to be more pushback from the males to kind of shift over, because I think, as you know, kind of like the expectation of working has changed. You know, women have just kind of like picked up a lot of the burden of the work and the household stuff, and men haven't really shifted from that. You know, they're working, and so they feel like that they don't have to do as many of these things because traditionally, like, they haven't had to, because the wife, they could make enough to support the wife at home to where she could pick up some of that labor or whatever. But yeah, there's just like a big weird shift in things right now. Number one, like I said, I don't think that things were as idealistic and great as people made it out to be, and life, I don't know, maybe it was easier back in the day, because I don't know. I mean, it was easier in a lot of ways, I think, because we're going through a lot of changes right now. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't think life, at this point in my life, I don't think I'm where I expected to be, but I'm also like not really bothered by it, because I'm just realizing that things are changing, and this is just where we're at right now. And also another thing is like how it feels to be an adult. And I think this has always been the case, but you know, when you're young and you look at older people and you think like, oh my gosh, they're grown-ups, they're adults. Like, I don't know what I thought that would feel like, but it doesn't seem to feel like how I thought it would feel like. Like, I don't feel like an adult. I guess I felt like as an adult, I would just like know everything and have everything all together, and that's not the case. And I think that's probably never been the case for most adults. It seems like most of them probably felt the same way all through time. These people that I thought were adults and had it together, you know, really didn't. And I think a lot of people too, once you get to a certain age, you know, you look up to your parents and you know, then you start to realize that like, oh, they don't really have it as together as I thought they did. But I don't know. Like, yeah, like, I guess the biggest surprise is just, like, kind of how I thought, you know, things were going to turn out in life by how they are. But like I said, I'm not unhappy about it. It just is what it is. So, anyway, that's day 117. I will be back tomorrow with day 118.